Yo, what's up, y'all? We finna bring back the horror animated, the horror animation stories. Yes, sir, bro. About to get right back into it, man. I hope it ain't too loud for y'all. Is it too loud for y'all? Let me turn it down a little bit.
I've lived a long enough life to have heard and seen a lot of unusual things. Of course, having spent many of my years in it, in the state of Florida, I've seen firsthand on several occasions why the infamous Florida Man is always making headlines across the country. Heck, I could have been one of those Florida men back in the day. But I can tell you without a doubt that no matter how steeled you think you've become against the surprises life throws at you, you're never invincible. Life always holds the power to shock you to your core. I mean, take me for example. I spent my years in the military, and I've spent my years on the streets, drifting between one rock and another hard place. But no matter what messed up stuff I have to see go down or deal with, I always bounce back. Well, almost always. Out of everything I've seen, only one thing made me lose my cool, and I think it was just the sheer unexpectedness of it. Just that I didn't think anything like it could ever happen in broad daylight in the middle of the city. But there's no denying that this happened. Everyone knows about it these days. It was a nice sunny day in Miami. I was making my way across town down the concrete mess of a highway just to get out of that part of town I'd been in for the last few weeks.
Say what's up in the chat, don't be rude. We got 2 viewers in here. Say what's up, man.
I'd never owned a car, so I was taking my bike down the shoulder. Except I wasn't riding it. I hadn't been sleeping well, and the night before I didn't manage to catch any sleep at all. I was honestly too drowsy to pedal in a straight line, so I was literally just walking my bike down the shoulder of the road. There was a sidewalk next to me, but it was on the other side of a concrete barrier, like the ones they use to divide directions of traffic on freeways. I could have hopped it on foot, but not with my bike. I don't know exactly how I'd ended up sandwiched there between the cars and the concrete, but after what happened later, I'd take that way again over the alternative. The sun was getting high and bright. It was starting to hurt my eyes. I squinted ahead and saw that there was a bridge down the way, a nice wide overpass to provide some shade. I started to quicken my pace, which felt pretty silly given that there were countless cars flying past me. But between the deafening whoosh of each vehicle passing, I kept thinking I was hearing something. Something that sounded like the shouts of a heated argument between drunk people.
That's the problem with you. It's going out of this town.
That might not be something you'd expect to hear in the middle of the day in your town, but in Miami...
We got a YouTube viewer too. Say what's up in the chat. Don't be rude, man.
It's more than common.
Say what's up in the chat.
I think it sounded a little unusual. I figured that sleep deprivation was screwing with me and pressed on. But as I got closer to the bridge, the shouting grew louder. It sounded more like screaming, but there was some other tone in there, like a growling rabid dog. Every time I thought I was about to decipher it, a car would blow past me. Then the sound would change. By the time I got to the bridge, my curiosity was piqued. I could definitely tell where the noise was coming from. Straight ahead of me, just a few more yards under the shade. I peeked over the edge of the barrier onto the sidewalk and saw 2 hairy pairs of men's legs sliding around together on the sidewalk. I instinctively darted my eyes away, not wanting to see much more above the thigh level. These experimenting people need to get a room. What are they thinking? Doing stuff like that on the side of the road in the beaming sun.
Word.
Well, obviously no one cares because no one's stopping. Just another day in Florida.
Mind your business.
I did my best to keep my eyes to myself as I passed under the shade. I was thankful for the break from the intense light, but beneath the underside of the road above, some strange sounds began to echo, forcing me in for another look. This wasn't an act of exhibition, but there were 2 messed up looking dudes lying naked on the concrete.
Oh hell no. Why would you even look?
Over the other, tearing into a man's face.
That's some explaining you gotta do, bro. Why the hell would you look? You already saw there was 2 grown men legs, bro. You already saw it was 2 grown man legs rubbing together, bro. That's when I would just turn the other way and just, you know what, I'm gonna mind my business. I'm gonna mind my business. This nigga said I took another peek.
Face with his teeth.
Dude, wow.
There was blood gushing out and spilling onto the asphalt, bone showing through the bite wounds on the face, and flesh in the attacker's teeth as he looked up to notice me, just to scream like a feral zombie as he looked me dead in the eye.
Should have mind the business. Should have mind the business.
It was at that exact moment that I jumped onto my bike and pedaled off at top speed. All prior drowsiness was erased by the shot of adrenaline. I kept looking back to see if I was being ran down by that psycho, but luckily he'd been content with scaring me off. I rolled down the first ramp that I got to and immediately went looking for a cop. I found one not even a block away, surrounded by several other very concerned-looking citizens. The police officer, however, seemed annoyed, but I was in a panic. And I never panic, so I must have been a sight to see all on my own. I barged through all those people and got right up into the cop's face. "There's a flippin' zombie on the frickin' pedestrian path. Up the ramp, just up that way. Come on, don't get hysterical with me, people. What do you mean by zombie? There's a dude eating another dude's face off, man." Finally, it seemed like something clicked in the cop's brain. He didn't say anything to us. He walked straight into his car, speaking something into his radio. Then he drove up the off-ramp, going the wrong way, out of sight. Me and those other civilians traded a few strange looks, all in an understandable loss for words. Some of them looked like avid bicyclists. Others just looked like people who had come out of their cars. I wondered how long that thing had been going on with all those people just driving past like that. Then we heard the gunshots. 5 of them in quick succession. Everybody on the street stopped what they were doing, dumbfounded. In just a few minutes, more and more cops came, followed by an ambulance, and then the army of press. News van after news van drove up to broadcast the scoop, live on the scene, or whatever. I heard some office building captured the whole thing on their security cameras. It was the talk of the town for weeks. I'm sure the name Miami was heard all across the world alongside Zombie Attack, Cannibal Eats Face off Homeless Man,
hey,
Florida Man Gets Wasted and Eats Face.
We got 3 viewers in the chat. Say what's up with the chat, man.
I don't care for
Don't
any
be
of that.
rude.
People who weren't there seem fascinated
what's up
by
with the
it.
chat, man?
But I know more than anything that I never want to see pictures of that horrible tragedy. Just from seeing it one time, I was shaken up for months. I still get hair standing up on the back of my neck whenever I pass under a bridge.
A person who is right. Riding his bike here off the MacArthur Causeway yesterday afternoon says he saw
ridiculously overpriced and overrated. She ordered the most expensive things on the menu on my tab, then told me to take pictures of her holding them up to commemorate the occasion. When I asked for a bite, she said,
"Oh, give
My
it a
bad,
rest,
YouTube.
honey.
We had a
I've done
technical
enough for you
difficulties.
today.
We're back on
I
YouTube
deserve this
now,
to
though.
myself."
I was confused by what she meant, but I didn't bother to ask. I heard
Twitch, don't be rude. Say what's up to YouTube. YouTube, don't be rude. Say what's up to Twitch, man. Don't be rude, man.
my phone go off from my purse, and I welcomed
My
the
bad,
distraction. I'd gotten a text from my sister-in-law asking where my mother was. I replied that she was at the coffee house with me, but I didn't get a reply. Instead, about 15 minutes later, the police pulled up. They marched inside with forlorn faces and told us to follow them to the police station, but they wouldn't tell us why. Now, I understand that they didn't want to make a scene at the place of business. When we got to the station, we were met by a man in a suit who spoke to us softly. "Hello, ma'ams. I have some very unfortunate news. If you would, I'd like to talk to one of you at a time in this room here. The other can sit in the waiting room with your family."
"Oh, let me go first. It's my birthday."
Sure. And Wall, something terrible happened today, ma'am. Your son-in-law has passed away.
Huh? What'd you say?
Your daughter's husband has been killed.
Why is she laughing? That's crazy.
No.
I bet.
In that moment, my world collapsed. I'd just seen my husband alive a few hours ago, but now he was gone. I couldn't think of a single person who would want to hurt him, but then it hit me. The last person I'd left him alone with was my own mother.
So he's dead?
She did it.
Yes, he was killed. He was shot a dozen times in his own home.
Yay! Happy birthday to me. I did it. I did it.
Everything after that is just a blur. They called my daughter out of school and made us go in the room with my mother. I remember her saying something like,
"Aren't you so happy, baby? You're free now. No more of that
You're
jerk
free now
hanging
is
around."
crazy.
but there was nothing I could say. I'm still struggling to recover from that day, almost 10 years ago.
You're free
I just
now
can't
is
believe
crazy
how
work.
deranged she became, that she would do something so despicable and then celebrate it. She even made me take her out to lunch afterwards. I know I didn't marry a perfect man, but she had no right to do what she did. We could have worked things out, but now none of that is possible. But over everything else, it's my daughter I pray for her grandmother to take away her father like that and act like she was doing her a favor. I just don't understand what snapped in that woman's mind.
She just looked crazy. I forgot that's a true story.
Why do you say that?
That's the big thumbs down. You didn't like him.
I want to tell you that just within the last 30 minutes, the judge did rule that there is now enough evidence for Cynthia Sitabaca to stand trial for murder.
Is he dead? You tell me. He's gotta be dead. Is he dead?
He's dead, man.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you,
That's
thank you.
crazy.
Thank you. Oh boy, oh boy. Good.
Cheering is crazy.
Thank you.
Did you check to see if he was dead?
I didn't care.
Cheering is crazy.
I used to work at a Walmart before I got fired for a headphone-related incident. I worked in the clothing department, and since Walmart isn't exactly known for its hot fashion, it was generally pretty slow. Aside from folding and hanging up clothes, there wasn't much else to do. That's why I picked up the habit of hiding my AirPods behind my hair and listening to music to get through the boredom of my shifts. I was fully aware that this was against company policy, but I didn't really care. I would have quit from the lack of stimulation alone if it weren't for my music. And it wasn't like my supervisor was around much anyway. I don't think they ever would have known if it weren't for the major incident which got me fired. The day started like any other. I finished the task left over from the previous shift and got settled into my usual spot by the fitting rooms, folding the same 10 articles of clothing over and over again, while tucked into a corner in which I'd only be seen by customers who were already in the fitting room aisle. It took almost an hour before I got my first customer. "Hello, sir. I'd like to try on these clothes, please." He had about 5 or 6 articles of clothing, so I handed him a tag numbered 6 and pointed him down the aisle as I gave him my usual customer service voice.
We got 4 viewers in the chat. Say what's up in the chat. Don't be rude, man. 4 viewers in the chat. Say what's up in the chat. Don't be rude.
Rooms are available. Hang this outside your door to let others know your room is occupied. Well, thank you very much. After waiting a few seconds for a response he didn't get, he gave up and took the first door on the left. Even on slow days, the business came in waves, so it wasn't more than a minute later before the next customer approached me. At a glance, I could tell there was something a little off about the guy. He didn't seem like the type of person that would usually buy clothes, like at all. But it didn't matter to me. I treat all customers with the same level of hospitality. None. Can I get in one of those rooms? The guy had far more than 10 articles of clothing, which is the limit per customer, but there was no way I was going to argue with him over it. So I just handed him a tag number 10 and sent him on his way away from me. All the rooms except the first one on the left are available. Hang this outside your door to let others know your room is occupied. He took the tag slowly, like he wasn't sure if it was some kind of trap or not. Then he went into the second room on the left. I gotta clock out after that, because most people would put a little more space between themselves and the people changing next to them. The fitting rooms were more like stalls. The walls don't go all the way down to the floor and they don't reach the ceiling. But there was nothing I was willing to do about it. That alone was not a good enough reason to interrupt somebody while they were changing. So I just went back to folding, waiting for them to come out and give me more clothes to fold. A few minutes in, my favorite song came on shuffle. I discreetly turned the volume up a few notches, just to jam out a little bit for the one song. Then I turned it back down so I could hear new customers approaching. That's when the weird guy came out. I thought it was strange how he came out before the other guy, considering he had so much more clothes. He had all the clothes jumbled up into one tangled mess, which he plopped down on the cart in front of me. Thank you. Have a blessed day.
What the?
He sounded out of...
What the hell did he do to them clothes, bro? Yeah, nah, you better get up on my stove, bro. I don't even want to touch them clothes. What did you do to them clothes?
Breath. Nah. Like he'd just done a fitting room speed run. He gave me a good look at the bloodshot white of his eyes, then tore his gaze away and walked off in a rush. I shrugged. Oh well, just another day of dealing with Walmart shoppers. But as I was folding up the clothes he'd just dropped off, I noticed something I'd never seen before. Not even at Walmart. There were bloodstains smeared all over the clothes. Little ones at first, just an eye-catching dab or two. Then more and more towards the bottom, until the last shirt was nearly soaked in red. I began to panic, pausing my...
Yo, go check up on the other dude, bro. Check up on the other dude, bro. He probably offed him. He probably offed him. Go check up on him.
Music to hear my quickened breath. I put aside the clothes and walked down the aisle. The number 6 tag was still hanging on the first door. And beneath it, a thick pool of blood seeping out into the aisle. I pushed open the door, revealing the source. The nice man from before was stuffed into the corner with his face torn to shreds, skin hanging off the bone. His
what did he do to bro?
Full of deep holes still spilling out with blood. The blood was everywhere. And on the mirror, a message had been written in it by hand. The writer's fingerprints visible in the coagulation. The parting words of the killer read, "The devil made me do it." Needless to say, I got fired that day. But I don't care.
Fired for what? You know what? I don't even need a job like that no more anyway. I don't need no job like that.
I don't even care that they caught the guy the same day. All I can think about when I remember that day is, how could I have let it happen? If I'd just been doing my job, if I'd only been paying just one little bit of attention, I could have heard that man being murdered. Maybe then, I could have done something to stop it. Maybe I could have intervened.
Like what?
Or screamed or something. I could have done anything to save that man's life. But no, I wasn't doing any of those things. I was lost in my own little world within my AirPods. And that man is dead because of me. Worse, he's
to
more
blame
than dead.
yourself is not crazy.
I really shouldn't be talking about this, but I've been keeping the secret from everyone for decades now. And as I've gotten more old
Story
and
number
withered over the
4,
years,
I think.
I'm close enough to death that I no longer care if they find me. It was the early 90s, and I just hit flat broke and fell out on the streets. I consider myself a wise and seasoned hobo these days, but back then I was a rather hopeless case. I barely had any experience with living on my own, let alone without a home. Not only that, but the city was a lot smaller all those years ago, so finding money was that much harder. I would spend all my time begging and pleading, and by the end of most days I wouldn't even have enough change to buy a hot dog from the convenience store. I tried everything I could think of. Busy streets, residential streets, kindness, crassness. I just wasn't getting anywhere. By the end of my first couple months, I was starving. My bones were protruding from my skin, and I could barely keep my eyes open from the lack of energy. It just goes to show the way people are, because many of them won't take pity on you, even if you look as bad as I did. I was sitting on the sidewalk, shivering from the first autumn wind and jingling my cup when some jerkwad in a cheap suit slapped it out of my hand, sending all my money flying into the air and tumbling down into the sewer. Go get a job, you worthless bum.
That was my job, bro. First off, cut this unibrow off. Please cut it off, bro. Please. Get a McDonald's sign on your head.
Get a job, you worthless bum. Then he walked off. I struggled to get to my feet and tried to pick up my quarters, but people kept accidentally kicking me, so I gave up on it. I stumbled away from that no-good avenue to a more relaxing street. I already knew this particular street was popular among the homeless, and I will admit, I had the intention of begging them for food or change, but without much expectation of that working. So you could understand my surprise when I saw a homeless couple sprawled out on a park bench all fat and happy, smiling and laughing and chatting. So this guy walks up to me and says, "Hey man, have you seen the newest Demon Slayer episode?" And I said, "I can't watch Demon Slayer, I'm homeless." Laughter was something I hadn't experienced in a very long time, and I certainly hadn't looked that well fed since even before I became homeless. I went right up to them and started to ask, "Excuse me, I don't mean to be a bother, but I'm having a really rough time out here, and I see that you guys are doing well. All I want to ask is, how have you been able to keep your health? Or how do you panhandle? Like, what's your approach?" "Get lost, buddy." "Please, sir, I beg of you. Winter is coming and I haven't eaten in weeks. I won't survive if I don't get something to eat. I don't want anything from you but knowledge." All right, man, keep it down. I'll tell you how we've been getting fed. But you gotta swear to God that you won't tell anyone about this, or I guarantee that starvation will be the least of your worries. You got that?" "Oh, I do. I swear, on the Lord in heaven above, may he bless you and your lady. Thank you." "All right, man, listen up, because I'm only gonna say this once. Walk 2 blocks west to the edge of the woods. On the far side of the street, there's a loose manhole cover.
He already lost me.
Enter and follow the sewer until you meet the old head, Maynard. He feeds the homeless. Now, get lost." I heeded him and got out of there. My brain was so fried by starvation that when I found the manhole...
I'm so bad at listening, bro. Wait, you lost me. Repeat. You already said you only gonna say it once, bro. I would have been starving. I'm so bad at listening, bro.
Didn't even think about the stench of the sewer once, but I did make myself wait until sundown. It seemed obvious with all the secrecy that man had pressed upon me that you weren't supposed to be seen going in. Getting there in the early twilight, I heaved off the manhole cover with what felt like the last of my strength, then stepped down onto the ladder and dragged the cover back, sealing myself in the musky darkness.
See some Ninja Turtles.
I carefully made my way down the ladder until my feet plunged into raw sewage. I didn't even flinch, let alone recoil. Or I might have noticed what was off about the sewer water. Instead, I reached into my pocket and found a lighter, flicking it on to provide myself some meager guidance in the oppressive stench. There were only two ways to go, forward and backward, but on the wall of the tunnel was some writing, crudely smeared on in some kind of dripping red ink, or maybe it was blood. It read, Manor's Buffet, with an arrow pointing down the tunnel. Seems like I'm in the right place. As I thought aloud, I heard my voice echo many miles through the corridors, stirring a number of creatures that were living within them. All of a sudden, I could hear the scurrying and chirping of rats that I hoped were running away from the sound of my voice and not toward it. But I didn't have the mental fortitude to linger on the grimness of my situation, not with all the ravenous hunger racking my brain. I pressed on, seeing not just more finger-painted signs directing me to the buffet, but also the size of the rats I'd heard. Monstrous things. But that's beside the point. I must have trudged about half a mile through the muck of the sewer when I knew I had to be getting close, because I could hear the people eating. They sounded like animals, growling, lip-smacking, hoots out of sheer celebration. I never heard such loud chewing, but even in the sewer, the sound of it made my stomach growl. I picked up my pace and tried to get there quicker, but pretty soon I found myself exhausted, forced to go on at a slow, steady pace. Eventually, I saw an intersection in the tunnel, and that's right about when my lighter ran out of juice. I pressed on, the sound of the feast growing louder and louder. But right as I was about to round the corner, I heard a snap, like a bone being broken in half. I stopped. A chill ran down my spine, trying my hardest not to stir the sewer water. That I could now clearly see was a dark turbid red and a light from around the corner. I crept up to the intersection, then peeked my head around the corner. Squatting in the stagnant drainage of a clogged culvert were 6 or 7 shirtless homeless men. All sat around a floating corpse of a man which they were devouring, ripping the skin from flesh, the flesh from bone, breaking the bones and sucking out the marrow, cracking the skull and scooping out the brains, chewing that bright crimson with tendon and sinew stuck between their teeth.
I guess if you're hungry, you're hungry.
I would have recognized that cheap suit anywhere. I'd seen that jerk just a few hours ago, right before these crazy cavemen killed him and dragged him down here.
Is that Unibrow guy?
Right before suit and with tendon and sinew stuck between their teeth. And I would have recognized that bright crimson with marrow, cracking the skull and scooping.
Oh, good riddance. Good riddance. I didn't even peep that was a Unibrow guy. But
just a few hours ago.
Look at all
right before these crazy cavemen killed him and dragged him down here. I turned and ran. I may have been on the verge of starvation, but I would have rather died than become one of them. 30 years later, and I've long since found out how to make a living on the streets.
How old
but I'm
are
still
you,
traumatized by what I saw. It's my nightmare in every fitful sleep I managed to catch. But I think I've outlived all the faces I remember from around that time, so I can finally get it off my chest without worrying of becoming a buffet myself.
What the hell, man? What do you want?
Ew.
What do you want me for? I'm just a bum.
I'm a professional photographer by trade, but I've had a few side hustles in the past. I'm also sort of a fanatic for the paranormal, which has led me down a number of photographic rabbit holes, but strictly as a hobby. I never get paid for attempting to actually photograph real ghosts. However, some years ago, I did combine those interests into an obscure side hustle that ended up getting me into trouble. Basically, I'd take pictures of grieving family members, then Photoshop images of their deceased loved ones into the photographs.
Why would you do that?
It was never my favorite gig. Not only because it involved the fabrication of the ghost that I was trying to find proof of, but mainly because I always had the nagging thought in the back of my mind that said it was taking advantage of people who were struggling with the loss of their loved ones. But all those people willingly responded to my ad. I never charged them much, just enough to make ends meet, so I continued to do it. Unfortunately, there was one client who forced me to stop. From the very beginning, I was getting strange feelings about their request. But at that point, I was already starting to get the idea into my head that I was really helping these people with their grieving process somehow. She called me around midnight with a strange excitement in her voice.
Yo,
You've reached
what's up,
Sunday morning
Caleb?
photography. How may I produce your memorable photos?
Hi,
good, Caleb?
I saw your ad on Facebook. How much do you charge for a funeral photography session?
Well, the usual rate is $100
Is this
for an
actually
hour-long
scary?
shoot.
A little bit. Just a little bit. Not too much. Just a little bit.
About 2 weeks until you receive your 5 finished photographs.
Can you get them to me by Monday if I give you 5?
Hold on, why my shit ain't working for? Okay, I'm alert. Alright, bet. Why my chat not popping up on my screen?
Sure.
Great. I'll text you the details.
I was a little flabbergasted. $500 for an hour on camera and 4 hours in the Photoshop was better than my professional rate at the time. I didn't really question why she needed them so fast, but I thought it was weird that she didn't even tell me who had died. Though, within minutes, she'd send over a dozen text messages, really long and drawn out blocks of text, detailing how distraught and depressed she was due to the sudden death of her 2-year-old daughter, and how she didn't want to talk about it over the phone. Before I even had time to type the words, "my condolences," she completely switched into business mode. She gave me a detailed list of the kinds of photos she wanted, how she wanted them composed, which pictures of her daughter she wanted to use, and how. Just a lot of very specific requirements that grieving people wouldn't usually care about. Most of the time, they're too preoccupied with grief itself to deal with the details. After all, a professional gets paid for the details. But this woman was something else. She had what she wanted in mind, and she wouldn't accept anything different in the slightest. All that said, because she was paying me so much, I ignored the feeling of suspicion in my gut, and met her the very next morning. She told me to meet her at a certain cemetery, which led me to believe that we'd be taking photos at her daughter's grave. Then she asked me,
which one of these gravestones would look best for the photo shoot?
You mean your daughter hasn't been buried yet?
No. I told you, I'm getting these photos for her service. Now, answer the question.
From that point on, I didn't ask any questions. We walked together through the cemetery until she found a random gravestone that she liked. That's when I began the photo shoot. She was the most nitpicky, particular customer I've ever had. I nearly filled up an entire SD card with duplicate pictures because the tiniest thing was out of place, or she didn't have the right facial expression. The whole time I was just hoping that the family of whoever this gravestone belonged to didn't show up and start screaming at us. This woman even had a book as a prop. I think it was titled The Giving Tree. She made me take a photo every second as she read the entire thing to her dead daughter, who wasn't even there. Then, after the hour of the photo shoot was over, she held me up for another hour as she scrolled through all of the hundreds of photos and picked out the 5 that she wanted produced. After she was finally gone, I purchased a few energy drinks and went home to pull an all-nighter to get all of her pictures done before the next morning. Honestly, I just wanted to be done with this client and claim my money. Thankfully, she didn't hassle me about the quality of the Photoshop upon delivery. That's what most people had issues with, but she didn't care. I saw the money hit my bank account and I thought I was finally done with that horrible woman. But I sure wasn't. A few days later, I got a knock on my door. The kind of banging that sounds like someone's trying to beat down your door, that makes you shoot out of bed in your underwear. I answered the door to 2 men in suits who held up their badges as they introduced themselves. "Good morning, sir. We are homicide investigators from the state. We have a few questions we'd like to ask you. You're not under arrest, but we'd like you to come into the local station." Sure. I haven't done anything wrong, so it shouldn't take long. But of course, I was there all day. My side gig had gotten me wrapped up in a murder case. That awful witch had taken advantage of me. She was under suspicion of murdering her own daughter, and she had me take those photos to make her look innocent, like she was grieving and yearning for her lost daughter, when she was the one that killed her. That incident ruined my reputation. From that moment on, I never did another one of those gigs. I never should have done them to begin with.
She used my work to make people think that she's innocent.
What did she want in the photos?
She told me that her daughter's favorite book was The Giving Tree. And she said, I want me holding the book, reading it to my daughter, Macy, who passed away. And I want to be looking down at her while she's reading the book. She wanted this more than any other photo. When I look at that photo now, I see, Mommy, why'd you do this?
What?
When I was still in college, I worked part-time at the local Walmart to make ends meet. Nowadays, I'm extremely grateful that my degree has kept me employed in a more respectable career, because I almost didn't make it out of my time at Walmart alive. I remember one night in particular, when the danger came to a head. It was a Friday. I was taking a few hours to catch up on my studying before going out for the night, but I got a call from my manager. "Hey, Sally. We need you to come into work tonight. Miriam didn't show up again."
All right. I'll be there in an hour.
It seemed like that there had been a lot of no-call, no-shows recently. I certainly didn't appreciate losing my night out to a late shift at work, but more than that, I didn't want to be the type of person that left their workplace short-staffed. That being said, I could already feel myself getting closer and closer to that point. The turnover was high, for a good reason. The pay was minimum wage, and management was always taking advantage of the people who didn't walk out the door. People like me. When I showed up at around 9, I was glad to see that it was a slow night for a Friday. Back when I was working there, Walmart used to stay open far later than it does today. I could see why they made the decision to change their hours. I only saw about a dozen cars in the entire parking lot, and most of the customers were already checking out. Still, I was pretty sour about the whole thing. It wasn't like I was getting paid overtime for this. The next several hours dragged on uneventfully, until finally my manager made the closing announcement. "Attention valued Walmart customers, the store is now closing. Please finish shopping and make your way to the checkout lanes. Thank you, and have a safe night." The way he delivered that announcement, you'd think he was a nice guy, but he was only that way to the customers, not with the employees.
Nigga looks like
I checked out my last customer and was about to walk out the door for the night when he yelled at me. "Hey, Sally, where do you think you're going?"
I'm going home? I just clocked out.
"No, you're not. Miriam's shift was 8 to close, so that means you're gonna help close the store."
Alright, what do you need me to do?
"Well, for starters, walk around all the aisles and make sure all the customers are on their way out."
You got it, boss.
The store was probably all but empty by the time he made his announcement. I didn't see anybody until I got to the electronics section. But of course, when it's the dead hours of the morning and you're trying to close so you can go home and get some sleep, the one person left in the store is always the one person who gives the most trouble. He was just some old fat guy staring at the wall of TVs. At first, I thought it was strange that he could be fixated on the same minute-long action movie preview that constantly plays on the TVs, but I quickly realized that somehow there was something else playing on the one he was staring into. I approached him slowly.
Excuse me, sir. The store is closed. You'll have to leave and come back to buy that tomorrow.
He didn't answer to me. He didn't even move or blink or give any indication that he was aware of my presence.
Sir, would you mind coming back tomorrow?
Not a single muscle twitched. He was engrossed into whatever he was watching, but I was ready to go home.
Sir, the store is closed. If you stay any longer, you will be trespassing.
Just a moment, Sally. I'm watching my favorite horror film. I gasped. I had no idea he knew my name.
Your name tag.
I had already clipped off my name tag when I clocked out a few minutes before then. Maybe he'd heard my manager yelling at me.
Get out or I'm calling the cops!
He stared me down with the smuggest of looks, then finally turned and walked away. I let out a sigh of relief. With him gone, there was nobody left in the store, so I went ahead and started shutting down the television displays. I began with the TV that the creepy old fat guy was enthralled with. I only glanced at the screen enough to realize that there was some sadistic gore movie playing on it, not something management would be okay with. I quickly reached behind the TV and ejected the disc he'd left. It was a blank disc, home burnt, with the date written on it with a Sharpie. It was dated 2 days before that night. I pocketed the disc and went back to work until I was finally allowed to go home. But when I plopped down on my couch, I couldn't relax. Something was lingering in the back of my mind. So I fished the disc out of my work pants and fed it into my DVD player. Immediately, my heart sank. There was no Hollywood reject. It was a homemade recording. And there were no actors. Only real people in mortal peril. A real-life snuff film. And the unwilling stars were my co-workers. I watched in petrified horror as the girls I thought had skipped out on work were tied up, tortured, brutalized, and eventually executed on camera. And at the end, the eyes of Miriam pleaded through the screen for help, but her mouth was taped shut. The things that man did to those girls, I just can't even talk about it anymore. I'm sorry. It makes me sick to my stomach. And even after all these years, I'm still so paranoid that I'd run into trouble on my way home from work one night and never show up again. Who was that man? And why did he even have the nerve to play this disc at the Walmart that was supplying his victims?
That nigga bold.
I panicked. I quit the next day and never looked back. I also reported the disc to the police, but nothing ever came out of it.
No way he's right.
Every night, I contemplate whether I was next. After all, he knew my name.
Nah, bro.
I don't know if anyone who needs this advice will be able to find this, but I'm going through the trouble of telling this story on the off chance that it will reach the right person. I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm homeless. I'm posting this on a library computer to a website some kid on the street told me about. Anyone out there who's in danger of becoming homeless needs to remember what I'm about to tell them. If you have people you can trust, never leave their side, for their protection and yours. I'm usually the first guy to follow this rule, but a few weeks ago, I forgot it for just one night. I was walking down the streets of northern Las Vegas around evening time. Probably a sketchy situation for most, but I felt pretty comfortable. The bothersome police mostly left this neighborhood to its own devices, and I had quite a few friends in the area. That's just the kind of guy I am. I can make friends with almost anybody, no matter how down and out any of us get. I just found a bag of half-eaten McDonald's in a trash can, so I was ready to find a place to sit down and eat, then turn in for the night. I dragged my mat of cardboard into an alleyway where I knew a guy named Skeg would be living. I'm sure Skeg wasn't his real name, but most homeless people in Vegas are hiding and in debt to somebody, so we almost never tell our real names. Hey, Bert, want some dumpster pizza? It's pretty fresh. Only if I can trade you some less than fresh hamburgers. You drive a hard bargain, Bert, but I'll have to accept. Sit down, let's divvy. Sure is a nice night. That's just how we were, Skeg and I. It certainly wasn't a nice night. I was just saying that. The sun was setting fast and the bone-chilling nighttime air was blowing in even quicker. But we were in good spirits despite all that. We had food and company, and that was all we needed. Though I think Skeg had found himself a little booze with that pizza, because he was acting a little more freely than usual. I almost hit the jackpot in the casino today, Bert. One little inch away, and that $5 would have been 5,000. One of these days, I tell ya, Skeg's gonna win it big. Oh yeah? What would you do with $5,000? You gonna invest it? Bah! All that investment crap is slow money. I'd get one of them blackjack tables and I'd clear it out. Double my money, then double it again. You know, Skeg, if somebody gave me $5, I'd spend it on food. I wouldn't gamble it away. That's how I got in the mess that I'm in. And that, Bert, is why you'll stay in the mess you're in, rotting in poverty, while Skeg is out shooting for the stars. Don't you know the sky's the limit? You can't stay stagnant. I don't need to hear this. Have a good night shooting for the stars, Skeg. I wish I could have just swallowed my pride and stayed there for the night. But in my grandstanding attitude, I made myself walk out into the cold to find a different place to sleep. I
didn't
feel like walking up on someone in the dark and giving them a fright, so I thought I'd just spend the night alone.
Yeah,
I laid down my car.
That was a joke. I was playing. I'm just playing. Hey, listen. No, don't lecture me, bro. I was just playing.
Or mat behind a gas station, pulled on my raggedy old blanket, and started to drift off. That's when I heard something sniffing at me, right in my ear. Half asleep, I brushed it off and rolled over, thinking it was just a stray dog smelling my breath. Then, I don't know what, but something made me throw off my blanket. The cold air woke me up right then, and before I could pry my eyes open, I could tell just from the dead quiet that I'd slept for some time. It must have been 4 a.m., but soon enough my eyes opened and focused in, and there was a hooded man standing right over me. He wasn't moving, just looking down at me with shrouded eyes. He was holding a plastic bag for some reason. I could hear it crinkling in the wind, and it looked like he was hiding something in his sleeve.
What the hell, man? What do you want?
Ew.
What do you want me for? I'm just a bum.
That wacko didn't respond. He just started to lift up his arm, letting his sleeve fall back. Then, sirens started to echo from around the corner. The creep froze, glanced around in every direction, then bolted out of nowhere. I got out of there too, before the cop showed up or he came back. I decided being alone wasn't worth the hassle, so I hustled back to Skeggs Alley. When I got there...
we got 4 viewers in the chat. Say what's up with the chat, man. Don't be rude. Don't be rude.
He was slumped over on his side, facing the wall. By then, I was freezing cold, so I did something I don't normally do. I laid down right next to Skegg and threw my blanket over the both of us so I could capture some of his body heat. Pretty quickly, though, I could tell it wasn't working. It was like he was barely giving off any warmth at all. And what was worse, his cardboard mat was wet. At first, I thought it might have rained, but then I remembered I lived in Nevada. Skegg? I threw off the blanket again and tried to shake him awake, but he didn't stir. I stood up and rolled him onto his back, revealing the worst.
Skegg! Skegg, man, come on, wake up!
He'd been attacked. His face was caved in by several strikes from a blunt object, and all of the blood he lost onto the mat meant he was surely dead. I stood in horror. A chill ran down my spine as I made the connection between this and the guy that had woken me up. I ran straight to the only place I knew could help, the 24-hour diner 4 blocks away. I told them everything and they called the police. If I'd only stayed with Skegg that night, he'd be alive, and I wouldn't have gotten so close to death myself. Oh well, I guess he got his chance to shoot for the stars and he took it. Just goes to show how important what I said was. Don't ever get caught out alone, because you never know when or where wackos like that creep are lurking. I heard he killed more than one homeless person, just stalking the streets with a hammer and a hood, bludgeoning people to death in their sleep. What's gotten into people these days?
It's crazy. I'm gonna read it real quick. On February 22nd, 2017, the Las Vegas Police Department set up a dummy wrapped in a blanket disguised as a homeless decoy in the streets of downtown Las Vegas. This was executed in an effort to bait a killer due to multiple reports of homeless people getting smashed with a hammer in their sleep. Yeah, it's crazy, bro. Pray for them homeless.
When you first did it, were you sure it was a dummy? Yes. The problem being is we've had some other people struck in the head in the exact same fashion that you struck this dummy in the head. You're going to go to Clark County. I am? Yeah. Why? Because you make us nervous. You do? Yeah, you do.
Hell nah, bro.
The story I'm about to tell is as true as the sky is blue.
What
and
story
even though it happened something like 15 years ago now, I remember every detail flawlessly. I was just a high school dropout doing what it took to make ends meet. No glamour about it. Walmarts used to stay open way after dark, even in the desolate rural areas like I grew up in. I was hired in as some kind of all-around helper, doing anything and everything my bosses told me to. I tell you, I was busting my back. Most of the hours I spent in Walmart, I don't remember. I was working so hard that it all became a blur. Not many memorable occasions, except for one. There's one night I remember like it was yesterday. I'd been assigned to the clothing department for the second half of my shift, and the clock had just hit closing time. I'd spent all day sorting clothes, managing the fitting rooms, and running the register by myself. But it was finally time to start cleaning up and counting the bills in the register. I was right in the middle of counting up all the ones when the man in question stormed up to the counter with a hoodie and a pair of jeans crumpled up in his arms. He was filthy and sweaty from the warm summer night, and his elbows and knees were all scraped up. He had a cross tattoo on his forearm with a bulging vein running across it, and he wore the most raggedy stained white tank top and shorts. He threw the clothes on the counter and demanded to buy them. "Hey mister, I need to buy these clothes, alright? I got the money." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. He made me lose track of the number I was on. "I'm sorry sir, but I just started counting the money in the register. I can't make any more transactions here. You'll have to go up to the front. You should hurry before they start closing."
I don't have time for that. I need to buy these here, now. I'm in a rush.
I got a little freaked out by how suddenly his demeanor changed. I'd been working in that Walmart for long enough. I knew better than to aggravate a customer like him any further. So even though it was against policy, I rang him up with the about $300 in untraceable cash sitting right behind the counter. The man handed me a torn and crumpled $20 bill, leaving him about $3 short. I gave him an apprehensive look, but decided to just accept it and make up the difference later with some change out of my own pocket. I would normally never do that, but honestly, I felt a little bad for the guy. He looked a lot rougher than most of the customers I saw on a daily basis, and that's saying something.
Throw me my money,
As soon as I gave him back the clothes, he ripped off the tags and put the jeans and hoodie on right over the clothes he was wearing. It was nighttime, but it was still over 80 degrees outside, which made that action a little strange to me. But by then it was too late. Without a word, he ran out of the store. I tried my best to get the encounter out of my mind, but it was no use. Barely 10 minutes later, a whole army of cop cars came barreling into the parking lot. They locked down the entire Crossroads Plaza and came in questioning everybody in the store. They told everyone they were looking for a convicted killer who'd escaped from prison and was on the run. And when they gave the man's description, I kicked myself.
The fugitive is a white male, late 40s, wearing a white tank top and shorts. He has a cross tattoo on his arm. If you believe you have seen this man, please come forward.
I had no choice but to give them a statement. I let them know he'd hassled me at the register and changed his clothes. They had me come with them to check the store's security cameras. I was extremely embarrassed. I saw how many breaks I gave the guy. But at least they were able to confirm that he was indeed the man they were looking for. To this day, I feel guilty about that night. I played in my head over and over again, looking for ways I could have played my cards more responsibly. I can't shake the thought that if I just stalled him for a few more minutes, or if I'd stood my ground about store policy and made him go up to the front, maybe he would have been caught. I'm always baffled that he didn't steal the wad of cash I left sitting right in front of his eyes. I know he must have been tempted, but he probably thought better of it. The worst part is, after all these years, that man is still on the loose. But when I get too down on myself for all that, there's one thing I can remember that makes me feel a little better about myself. A few nights later, while that guy was still all over the news, the story broke out that the fugitive, some guy by the name of Richard, had actually been stopped by the police on his very first day on the run. But he somehow convinced the cop that he was a jogger on the hottest day of the year. I may have been reckless, but that cop who stopped him and let him walk was just plain stupid.
You live around here, boy? What's your address?
I don't have an address.
What is? We got an escapee.
Where from?
A prison.
Prison here?
You know the bad thing about it? You're matching up to him.
That sucks, doesn't it?
Do jog again in the future. Carry some ID with you.
All right.
That's our quick line there.
Have a good day now.
Okay, that cop was kind of stupid.
Almost everyone has an ex, and when you get into a relationship with someone, everyone gives at least a moment of thought to the other people their new partner has been with. because you know they're thinking about yours. My wife and I are no exception. Well, I should say my ex-wife and I were no exception. I've recently had to divorce my partner of nearly 15 years.
Damn.
I definitely didn't see it coming, though I guess I should have. But despite how quickly the decision was made, I still feel confident in my judgment. By the time we met, we had both been in the dating game for a while. And looking back on it now, it seems obvious to me that both of us at that point were more interested in finding someone good enough to settle down with, rather than finding the perfect someone, or whatever naive single people say. We both had our runs with narcissists, clingers, nutcases, and a few other flavors of insufferable people. But we each seem refreshingly normal to the other, so none of that history made a difference. Man, I should have paid a little more attention. Before we were married, my ex-wife would talk every now and then about this guy named Jason. Out of all her exes, he was the one she'd gotten closest with. They were together for a few years, and they even lived together.
What?
To be
Why
honest,
he look like that?
I'm not sure I ever heard her say anything that bad about him, except that he had some strange habits and beliefs. When I asked why they broke up, she said something that I always thought was weird.
He moved to Tibet and became a monk. He said that money was the root of evil or something like that.
When she said that, the identity of this Jason guy clicked in my mind. I used to hear about him in secondary school, how he was always blurting out strange things in class, or sitting by himself every day at lunch, and generally just flying a lot of red flags, like bringing razors to school to shave his head in the washroom. Wait, you mean Buzzcut Jason? You dated him?
Yeah? So? What's wrong with dating the weird kid?
Because if you date the weird kid, that means you're also weird.
Word.
Oh, grow up. It's not like he was violent or anything. I felt bad for him, so I gave him a chance. He actually turned out to be really nice. Until he dumped me to go meditate himself into the grave.
That should have been my first red flag, but she managed to talk me out of suspicion. By all my means of judgment, Jason had really fallen off the face of the earth. Nobody I knew from secondary school had heard from him in years, and my ex-wife was the only one who claimed to know where he'd gone. For all I knew, she was right. Jason had relocated his life to Central Asia to practice Tibetan Buddhism, giving up everything he'd ever had in the process. Certainly that's not something you hear every day, but it's not something you never hear. And after my ex and I got engaged, Jason was never mentioned again. I didn't care.
What I said.
What's one piece of baggage on an otherwise normal person? Unfortunately, that wasn't quite the end of it. I think that most people tend to get suspicious of their partner's loyalty at times. But I never thought I'd be one to have so many reasons to doubt it. I almost went crazy, thinking I was being overly paranoid about all the weird stuff going on. Coming home a few minutes early and seeing my wife out of breath for no reason. Hearing doors slam just before I got inside the house. Her rarely ever letting me go inside her car, and staying out super late on weekdays. I told myself those paranoid sensations were just the scars of being cheated on in university by other women. I thought once we started raising our family that it would all be put to rest. But then, our first child came out with bright ginger hair. My ex-wife is a natural blonde, and I've got regular old brown hair. I can still remember how it felt when that pit formed in my stomach. There was an intense discussion right then. Neither of us are redheaded, Jane. That's a recessive gene that nobody in my family shows, and you can't carry it because you're blonde. Explain to me how that happened.
Oh my god, I can't believe you. You didn't even know my natural hair color is auburn? It's like you don't even know me.
She lied.
Maybe you cheated, and you just want to shift the blame on me.
Oh, come on. How'd you...
If I cheated, how the hell the baby come out of your body? What? Alright, but...
Come to that conclusion.
Enough of this! If you keep questioning me, I'm divorcing you and taking everything you have.
And that was how she got me. Holding the word divorce over my head like a guillotine. I always feared becoming one of those old lonely divorcees who spend every night at the pub. More than anything, I didn't want that to become me. So begrudgingly I dropped the issue. And made
the way to solve that issue, bro. First off, you should have gotten a prenup. But that's, you know, that's a different story. But if you didn't get a prenup and you want a divorce but you're afraid of her taking everything, Don't divorce. Just leave. Just go ghost. Fake your death. Do something.
Extra sure that the next kid was mine. But things never got easier. Those suspicions of mine never stopped getting stirred up by one thing or another. It started to get to me. Over time, I think I degraded mentally. Just from the stress and distrust that I was forced to live with for so many years. When we had our fourth kid, she told me that she was going to quit her job and become a housewife.
Well, one of us has to stay home to take care of all 4 of them, and you make more money, so it should be me. You don't really have paternal instincts anyway.
And to commemorate the moment, she wanted a photo taken of the 6 of us. We all crammed together on the couch, and I tried my best to put on my happiest smile for the camera. She posted it to her Facebook page as she updated her employment status. I didn't think much of it as I was exhausted from work. I was ready to go to sleep, especially since I had to get up early the following morning. When I woke up, my phone was blowing up with messages on Facebook, and they all said the same thing. Who's that guy on the couch that you guys are sitting on? The one right under your wife. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I had to take a closer look at the picture. And that's when I saw a face I hadn't seen in over 10 years. Jason, buzzcut Jason, lying under some kind of blanket, acting as a cushion for my whole family to sit on. And just from the way my ex was sitting on his face, I knew that he'd been the one she was cheating with all those years. I couldn't handle all the lies. He never went to Tibet to become a monk. He moved into her basement and became a bum. I never knew he was ginger because he always kept his head shaved. All the times I was suspicious and she tried to gaslight me.
All 4 of them kids is his, bro. Wow.
I'm not even sure a single one of those kids are mine. How many times did I narrowly miss an encounter with him? Was I ever safe? I didn't want to know. I divorced that wench at the first chance I got. And I may have become one of those lonely old pub regulars. But I'll tell you one thing. I still feel sound in my judgment.
Listen, bro. I'm actually trying to go to bed tonight. Oh my. Yo, that's actually creepy as hell. That's creepy as hell. What the fuck? Why would he even peek his face though? Like, what the hell? What the hell, bruh? Should I do another one? Cause I was planning on doing this as one video, you know, like a little hour-long stream. Is anybody still there? Anybody still there? Say what's up in the chat if you still there. That last one was crazy though. All these are like an hour long. You know what, bro? Yeah, we go continue this tomorrow, bro. I'll stream again tomorrow. I'm gonna catch